This is review for you probably, right? You've always learned about the scientific method and stuff like that, but it is something that we have to talk about. And we're going to do an entire lab about this in class, so that'll be great, okay? Okay, awesome. So let's get into it. All right. Scientists have to conduct their research in a way that other researchers will know and understand how their data was collected, right? And be able to agree on the validity of their findings. So, scientists use this amazing thing called the scientific method. Here it is. You've been learning about this since you were a wee little child. Okay? So there's, different steps in whatever version of this you see, but we're going to talk about it this way. Okay? First, you observe and question. You form your testable hypothesis or prediction. You collect your data. You conduct the experiment to test the prediction. You interpret the results. And then, if the hypothesis is accepted, you disseminate the findings. So let's talk about it real quick. Okay. So first, making observations. Right. You need to use your senses, all right, to take in information about the world. You're looking for objective facts, not inferences. Here are a few examples. Let me click. Okay. So an example of something that you observe might be this, right? There was an axe next to the bloody dead body. Great. An example of an inference that would not be something good to write down as an observation would be this. The axe was the murder weapon. You don't know that, right? You don't know that. So another good observation would be the axe at the crime scene was found 10 meters to the left of the body. Perfect. You got numbers in there, everything. A bad example of something to make as an observation, might be this. The killer was left-handed and threw the axe to the left. You don't know that, right? That's just an inference. So, you've got to do some background research. You have to ask a question, okay? So, depending on what you want to research, you're interested in, you have to look up what's previously known about the topic, okay? Based on that, you're going to build on it. So, what is it that still needs to be known or confirmed? That's when you're going to form a hypothesis, okay? This is a testable statement, often contains a prediction. Okay, so make sure when you're writing your hypothesis that it is written as a statement and not a question, okay? You're never going to see the words I think or I predict in a hypothesis. Keep that in mind. It has to be testable. And for a hypothesis to be properly supported through evidence or rejected, it must take a specific stand one way or the other. It can't be wishy-washy. So we'll read this, right? What will happen if we mix oil and water? It will not blow up. Is it a well-written hypothesis? Not quite. Okay, so what's a null hypothesis? This is a vocab word that you guys should know, okay? So a null hypothesis predicts no relationship between two phenomena, no difference among the groups, all right? So essentially it's a statement that can be proved wrong. An example of this would be fish death has no relationship to contaminants in the water. That's your null hypothesis, okay? Hopefully you're going to prove that null hypothesis wrong, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So the third thing in the scientific method that y'all will be doing is you have to collect your data, okay? And you have to conduct the experiment. So most experiments that you do, and the one that you choose to do in class, you're going to have a control group. The control group is the baseline or standard situation with no variables changed, okay? It has to be the basis for comparison. You have to compare your experimental group to your control group, all right? So having said that, you're going to have an experimental group as well. This is the one that you will manipulate and change while you keep the control group the same, okay? Oh, here's a funny little joke. Ha ha ha. Well, I guess we're the control group. It's funny. Ah. Okay. So these are some vocab words you need to know, which you should know, from years back, but you have your independent variable, right? That's what you're going to change, your independent variable. Your dependent variable is what will be measured, okay? Your dependent variable depends on the independent variable, okay? Try to think about it that way. You also have to think about what you're going to keep the same. So you have your controlled variables or your constants. If you remember mixed, you can remember manipulated, independent, x-axis, okay? This is the one you manipulate, you change, okay? It's independent variable, and it's always going to be on the x-axis when you graph it, okay? The other thing to remember is dry, okay? This is always the dependent variable. It's a responsive one, right? It depends on the independent variable, and it's always going to be graphed on the y-axis. So sometimes I can't remember them, and I get them confused in my head. This always keeps it straight, right? I'm one of those people that just didn't get the gene for telling their right hand from their left hand. I have to think about it, right? Twister was really rough as a kid. Okay, so some common issues with experimental design. You're going to find these while you do your experiments this year, okay? Sometimes your sample size is too small, all right? So you're not really getting good data with it, or the data that you are getting from that sample size isn't indicative of the bigger population, okay? If you don't have any repeated trials and you only do it once, well, that could have just been good luck, something like that. If you have no controlled variables, obviously you don't have anything to compare it to, so that's a problem. Same situation with the control group. And if you have more than one independent variable, that's also a problem, right? So an example of that would be diet pills. You go to the store, you're like, I'm going to lose some weight. You get your diet pills, right? And on the bottle it says something along the lines of, if you take this pill along with healthy diet and exercise, you'll lose weight, right? And then it also says, not confirmed by the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. But anyway, there's no possible way to know if the pill is making you lose weight, or if it's your diet, or if it's your exercise, right? There's too many independent variables. There's no way to test if it's the pill, okay? So let's look at this example and see if you guys can figure out the answers here. Okay, so Lois wants to find out whether feeding babies mashed carrots improves their vision. Sure. She borrows 50 babies from her son Stewie's daycare. 25 of them are given a normal diet. 25 are given mashed carrots as their evening meal every night. She then gives them a vision test. Okay, so take a minute to think about this, and I'm going to put the answers up. I want you to think about what the independent variable, the dependent variable, the control group, the experimental group, and the constants are. Okay, so here you go. We've got the diet of the babies would be the independent. That's what you're changing, you're manipulating, right? Carrots or no carrots. No carrots. The dependent variable would be the vision. Okay, so maybe she'll give them a vision test, and whatever they score would be the dependent variable, right? So the vision of the babies in this situation depends on the diet of the babies, okay? The control group would be the diet with no carrots. They're going to compare the diet with carrots to the one without. The experimental group would be the diet that has carrots. And then the constants, these are the things that are going to stay the same for the experiment. Okay, so you've got the rest of the diet, everything they eat has to be the same. The age and the sex of the babies has to be the same. Their baseline vision has to be the same. If they're different at the beginning, then there's no point in doing this experiment. The amount of sleep they get, and they have to be given the same test. Okay, I'm sure you guys can think of other examples, but those are just a few that I came up with. Okay, so the next step of the scientific method is you have to gather, interpret, and present the data. Okay, so you're going to collect the information from the experiment, okay, and ideally put them into tables. So there are two different types of data that you can collect. Okay, there's qualitative data. What do you think qualitative? Think of descriptive words. All right, we're talking color, smell, texture, presence of smoke, sounds, stuff like that. Quantitative, you should already be thinking in your head, means numbers, numerical data, quantity, quantitative, right? So this would be the number of bubbles, the length, the weight, the amount remaining, stuff like that, okay? These are some words that you guys should know, all right? Let me put this over here. Just some vocab word and stuff that you will be reading in your textbook, but replication. This is when you replicate an experiment. You want to get several sets of data. You want to do several trials. If you only do one, it's not enough. Okay, your sample size is the number of times the measurement is replicated. Okay, accuracy and precision. You definitely learned these in chemistry, and I'm going to show you the exact picture you probably saw here in a second. So, accuracy, how close a measured value is to the actual or true value. Meanwhile, precision is how close to one another the repeated measurements are. Okay, uncertainty is just how much the measure differs from the true value. So let's look at this picture here. Okay, this is what you've seen before, right? Everybody has. Okay, so this first example here would be an example where there is low accuracy, right? Because we're aiming for the target, but there's high precision. So the darts are close to each other, but they're not close to the target. Okay, so you've got low accuracy, but it's highly precise. All right, in this situation, you have high accuracy because they're all closer to the target. They're pretty accurate, but the precision is low, so they're very far away from each other. The data points are not that close, okay? An example of high accuracy and high precision is right here. Okay, they're all close to the target, they're accurate, and they're all relatively close together, so we would say that's precise. So you've got high accuracy and high precision. Awesome. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about this too much, but if you want to pause the video and go through and match these vocab words to their definitions, you can do that. And then here in a second, I'm going to click and show you the answers. So these are all the answers right here. Beautiful. Here, I'll move that. So if you want, go through and check them. Perfect. Oh, here's another joke for you. What do I got? The results are in. The hot flashes are just symptoms of menopause. Phew. Everyone else thought it was global warming. Oh, man, I got to stop with these. Okay, so let's talk about graphs. Because once you get your data, you have it in the charts, you have to figure out how to present the information in an understandable format. So there is a best format or a better format for different types of data, okay? So how do you select the graph type? Basically, you have to identify the two sets of data that are going to be graphed, all right? So you have to think about the independent variable and the dependent variable, all right? Which one's on the x-axis? That's always the independent variable, right? Mix and dry. So you have to think about if the data is in categories or if it's continuous, all right? So what do I mean by that? Let me go to the next slide. Okay, categories would be a situation where you have different groups. Okay, there's no in between. This might be something like, you're plotting colors, genders, ranks. It could be, first, second, third, different species, different grades. It could be anything like that. Okay, things that are in categories. So you're probably already thinking about what graph might be the best, right? A pie chart might be good for something like this, right? Things are in categories. Another thing that might be good is a bar graph, right? You're comparing different categories. All right. The other type of data you might have is continuous data. Okay. So this could be standard measurements or ranges that you need to use a different type of graph to show it in the best way. So lengths, amounts, weight, time, temperature. Chances are the lab that you're going to do in class, your experimental design lab, you'll probably use some sort of continuous graph. So here we go. If you want to compare data by dividing it into intervals or a frequency distribution, you might do something like this. Anybody remember what this is called? A histogram. Okay, so we're going to look at histograms a whole lot when we do our overpopulation unit because we use those to show the population of different countries and stuff like that and how they're changing over time. If you want to determine cause and effect trends between data points, maybe a good graph would be a line graph, okay? And if you want to determine correlation between variables or a trend among all the data points, the best option for you there might be a scatter plot graph, okay? So once you get done with that, you have to analyze data and draw your conclusions. Okay, so you're interpreting your results and seeing what you learned from the experiment. Okay, do your results support your hypothesis? You have to think about those things. So there are two terms you need to be familiar with: inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. Okay, inductive reasoning is the process of making general statements from specific facts or examples. Okay, so let me give you an example because when I was your age, I used to get these confused all the time. But here's an example, okay? Charlie, the student, is super naughty. Okay, there's another student named Mac. He is naughty as well. All right, and also a third student named D, also super naughty. So an example of something I might come up with that is inductive reasoning would be to say all students are naughty. Okay, so I'm making a general statement from specific examples. I'm taking those 3 kids that are naughty, and from that I'm saying all kids are naughty. All right. Deductive reasoning is the process of applying a general statement to specific facts or situation. Okay, so it's kind of backwards. So, for example, if we know that, in general, air pollution kills trees, and we go out into the forest and we see a dead single tree, we might say that tree must have died from air pollution, right? We may attribute that death to air pollution, but that might not necessarily be true. Okay, so one of the last things you have to think about is writing a conclusion. All right. These are things that I think we should go over when we actually start writing our lab reports and stuff like that. So I'm not going to go through every step, but there are certain outlines you can use in order to write a conclusion. But this is something that you're going to be doing in class this year. And also when you go to college, you'll do a lot in your chemistry classes and biology classes. And I know that as chemistry students here at KC, unless you took AP Chem, I'm not sure how that works. I don't think you really wrote too many of your own lab reports because I used to teach chemistry and I know what you do in those classes. So I really think that's something that we need to focus on this year that will help you tremendously when you do go off to college and you have those college level classes. So scientists go to conferences, they talk about their papers, they publish the results. The whole concept or idea of doing this is so that other scientists can see what they found and hopefully they'll take home that information and repeat the original experiment, to verify or to challenge the results. And that's why science is so amazing, okay? Because we have all these scientists all over the world who are constantly, challenging themselves, challenging other people, and they're just making science as a whole better, okay? So other people repeat it, and voila, we learn more. We become stronger as a society, and we know more. We have more knowledge, okay? So a few more things. We're almost done, y'all. Just bear with me. But scientific theory is a widely accepted explanation for something. All right. It's only formed if the experiment is repeated many times by many people. So it's been verified, it's been challenged, it's been repeated, and the results are always consistent. That is a scientific theory. Okay. So here's an example of this whole scientific process. I'm not going to go through and explain it, but you can look at that if you want. It's also in your book. And one of the things I want to talk about before we go is just the fact that environmental science is unlike any other science. I've said it 1,000 times already, and I've only had you for 2 weeks. But it presents lots and lots of different unique challenges. So some of the challenges are listed right here. Okay, one of the reasons why it's so difficult is because there's no control planet to compare the Earth with. Okay, we've never been in this situation where we actually know what comes next. We can anticipate it, but it's basically the wild, wild west in the realms of science. So we have to know as much as we possibly can in order to help us in the future. All right? Also, because of that, it's difficult to decide what's better or worse for the environment than something else. Like I said before, it's all gray. It's one big, hot, dirty mess. It's really difficult to decide what's the best solution. When you guys did your Cats of Borneo activity, you saw that one solution, even though it did take care of the problem, also led to lots of unintended consequences, and that makes it really difficult. It's not easy to apply one system to another because there are so many interacting parts, and because humans can manipulate our environment and ecosystems and stuff like that, it makes it really difficult. The last thing, human well-being, okay, that's a big concern, all right? Because people that are unable to meet their basic needs are less likely to be interested in saving the environment. For an example, if you have grown up in a place, or you have a friend or family member that has grown up in a place where you've had very little, you're going to be worrying about your day-to-day life, right? Where's your food coming from? Where's your water coming from? Stuff like that. So, we have a lot of people in developing countries who are just walking 8 hours a day to get water. The least of their concern is the environment and how we can fix that, right? They're just trying to survive. They're trying to figure out how to live. So this is another big problem because the majority of people and some of the countries with the largest populations are, developing countries. So we'll talk a lot more about that. Every time I do these notes, I'm going to leave with a riddle. So here's your riddle. Please don't try to cheat on this. Don't try to look it up. But the next day in class, we'll go over it and see if you guys got it. So today's riddle is this. What English word has 3 consecutive double letters? Try to think and see if you can figure it out. Okay? And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Have a great day, and I will see all of your beautiful faces in class. All right? See you later.